Prime Minister Modi's Gulf outreach continues. Today he's in Qatar. It's his second visit to the country. The first was back in 2016. Of course, the circumstances are very different this time. This trip has a lot of context. Earlier this week, Doha gave India some good news. It freed 8 ex-Indian Navy officers. All of them were on death row last year, but this week they came home. And days later, the Indian Prime Minister is in Doha. It's a clear diplomatic message, sort of like a thank you tour. The Prime Minister landed in Doha late on Wednesday. He was hosted by Qatar's Prime Minister. The two leaders held talks and dinner together. And today was the big meeting. It began with a ceremonial welcome by the Emir. His name is Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Take a look. Then it was time for talks. Modi and Al Thani had last met in December. Both men had attended the COP summit in Dubai. Today, they discussed a number of issues like energy trade, bilateral investments, space collaboration, and cultural ties. They also exchanged views on regional issues. I presume that included the war in Gaza. Prime Minister Modi invited the Emir to visit India. He also thanked him for releasing the 8 Indian sailors.
Prime Minister thanked His Highness the Emir for his support for the welfare of the Indian community, and in this regard expressed his deep appreciation to His Highness the Emir for the release of 8 Indian nationals of Al Dahra Company. We are extremely gratified to see them back in India.
Now, Qatar is an interesting player. Their trade with India is $18 billion. Some 840,000 Indians live and work in Qatar, and they make up 27% of Qatar's population. Indians make up 27% of their population, but the foundation of this relationship is energy. Qatar is the largest supplier of LNG and LPG to India, liquefied natural gas and liquefied petroleum gas. It makes up 48% of India's LNG imports and 29% of the LPG imports. Last week, both sides renewed an energy deal. Qatar will supply LNG to India for the next 20 years. The deliveries will begin by 2028. So there's a lot to like about Qatar. It's a reliable supplier of energy. It's home to thousands of Indians. It is also a solid investor in multiple industries. Now we come to the not-so-good parts. Qatar has a history of supporting terrorists. Hamas's political leadership lives in Qatar. The Taliban leaders used to live there. Plus, many reports link Qatar to Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So Doha is not a straight shooter, and that is by design. You see, compared to other Gulf states, Qatar is tiny. Just look at these numbers. Qatar's population is around 2.7 million. The UAE's population is almost 10 million. Saudi Arabia's population is more than 30 million. Same with the economic output. Qatar's GDP is $237 billion. The UAE's GDP is almost twice that, and Saudi Arabia's GDP is $1.1 trillion. So Qatar doesn't stand a chance in a conventional race, which is why Doha uses unconventional methods, like soft power through Al Jazeera, or buying up sports clubs like PSG, or hosting non-state actors like Hamas. It puts them on the table. Just consider the war in Gaza. Qatar is involved in every ceasefire talk. It's playing a more important role than the likes of Saudi Arabia. And even the Americans know this. Doha has emerged as a key US ally in West Asia. In fact, the biggest overseas US base is in Qatar. The Al Udeid Air Base, the biggest that the Americans have outside the US. So think of it this way. Qatar is like the shady guy at the bar. He knows all the bad guys, has a lot of money, and also a dark past. Would you rather have him on your side or against you? The Americans are very clear about it. They want Qatar on their side. Looks like India too is interested in a long-term partnership. It's all about strategic gains. Let me take you back to 2017. Qatar was under blockade from other Arab Gulf states. They accused Doha of supporting terrorism. And that siege led to a food crisis in Qatar. You see, 90% of their food was imported via Saudi Arabia. That supply was cut. And when that border closed, it meant trouble. Guess who helped Qatar then? India. New Delhi opened a direct trade route to Qatar. It's also been helping Doha improve local agriculture. What does that tell you? A, India has largely ignored inter-Arab rivalries, and B, it seems willing to overlook the shady stuff. And this strategy seems to be paying off. Getting alleged spies freed from death row is no small feat. It requires leverage. And that's something that New Delhi has cultivated in Doha.
From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.